All right, how we all doing? Hope you're all doing good, ready for the last session. So we're going to be talking through just how people can use these sports platforms. So I'm the sort of guy, I'm in the dark room running the models. They let me talk to you guys, the coaches. They keep me miles away from those players because I'm too weird for that. But I'm in the business of information and communicating that. And I think that is something we can all improve. And I want to show you guys how maybe I think that AMS platforms can be leveraged by you guys to support your decisions, not make your decisions for you, which is a theme we'll continue to hit. All right, just modern platforms though, the evolution has been fantastic to see, right? Things are really changing, we're learning a lot more, and that's what this gives us, is better vision. We actually get to see what's happening, and that's all this is. We get better views. So we're gonna talk about information and how to capture it, controlling for the individual. That's really what this modern data environment is letting us do, is control for individuals. And then we're going to talk about using that knowledge, right? What are the actual practical applications of this? So we're going to talk about how you might use it in training sessions or game day, player development, and then something that's sort of coming in the future is planning and projection of loads. I always start from a perfect world image, right? What would we know if we had perfect information? We, of course, don't. But we'd know everyone's injury probability, how likely they are to get hurt in a given day, their optimal performance state, how our training and strength and conditioning actually impacts their performance, exactly how much sleep they need, how much stress they require, and what their wellness metrics should look like. We don't have this, but I like to start back from perfect and then work backwards. I feel if you start from the ground up, you limit yourself too early. Here, we start from perfect, we'll often end up a lot closer. So where are we without data, right? It's a situation with many unknowns, right? We don't see things. Some coaches do great, but it's a lot of attention required, right? You have to be cognizant of everything that's happening, paying attention to it. So that's challenging. That takes up your bandwidth. You have more important things to focus on. So how do we move towards a perfect world where we start to know these things, right? We want to capture information. We got to process it, model, and visualize it. When I'm capturing information, the way I like to think about it is, what do I want to capture, right? What's first? What real-world factor do I want to capture? Before we talk about data, before we talk about devices, it's what is it I want to capture, right? This could be internal, external load. It could be how much they're sleeping. It could be how well they are, how stressed they are. Once we know those, then we think about, all right, what numbers could I pull from those? So it could be distance. It could be high-speed running. I know that's not the be-all and end-all. How much they're sleeping, how stressed they are. And then we think about, what can I use to capture this information? So that can be GPS trackers, sleep trackers, AMS surveys, and the number of devices for this is growing exponentially, right? I just have some of them here. So people pulling in GPS units, heart rate monitors, force plates from Vault, Nordboard, different timing gates. We have motion captures. We've got wearables, which questionable usage, and then Ultrax as well. All right, we get wellness surveys, we summarize them all up. This is the part I don't enjoy. I'm not a data engineer. I do not want to be joining all that data. Having someone else do that for me makes my life a million times better, right? We need to combine all of those sources together because we want the complete picture of what is actually happening with our athlete. If we analyze it separately in different parts, we're going to miss things, right? Patterns are there. We want to control for personal variation. We got to make things for the individual. Engineering data is time-consuming, and this is sort of where I'll really be very pro, right? Athlete management systems, is they do that for you. They link everything together, and you get to see it all in one place at the same time. Data quality is key. I don't know if you guys have come across this, but garbage in, garbage out is a thing we often say, right? If you don't know what's in your data and you're analyzing it, it can be nonsense. Talking about wearables, so one of our teams back at Notre Dame gave all of their players Oura rings, and they wanted to measure everyone's sleep. The players didn't really trust the coaches at that time, thought they were stopping them going on nights out. So I had one very studious player who said he'd go to bed each night wearing 4 or 5 rings. So the rest of his teammates could go out and party, and they're like arriving to practice exhausted. And wow, you got 9 hours sleep last night? You're so rested. Another case, we were working with the team and we were summarizing data over a pretty long period, right? And we were like, wow, they all got really fast one day. What was going on here? So we visualized it out and it's like, wow, what were they doing on Thursday? How did they manage this? Were they running really fast? They wore their GPS trackers on the bus, right? You need to know the context of your data and we need to be accurate with it. Let's go back a second. Controlling for variation is huge. We need to know the needs of each individual player, right? Training sessions are going to have different impacts on different players. You guys know this, but to do it at scale, I'm talking about 200 catapult metrics. I've seen some of them where there's 1,200 metrics. That's crazy. To look at all those individually, so we want to figure out things, see how it's different for each person. Just an example of why this doesn't work, right? We have 2 players. They both ran 11 kilometers in a single day. For player A, it's completely fine. It's his average. For player B, that is a crazy increase in workload from what he's used to. That puts him at risk. Looking at raw numbers doesn't do too much for us. We need to know the historical context. We can customize things now, and this often works within athlete management systems, of levels for each athlete, right? Set your own bands. Modify them to account for your players' ages, their tiers, get them to perform where you want them to perform. This is actually what I do. This is my job, right? I take data from all of these sources, GPS trackers, sleep trackers, wellness survey, physical measurements, anything else you've got. You got data on it, I want it. If you've talked to me around here, you know I'm just like, please, more data. Data is good. Data processing. Huge, really important part of it. We got to join it all, link it all together. Feature engineering is the magic, right? Creating new metrics. Can you capture that source of variation? So this can be AC ratios, anything like that. Any long-term calculations, you might have sums of distance, you might have means, deviation from averages, percentages of max. Create those, gives us more information. Then we build models, and we can predict most things. Is it accurate? Often not. That's not often the point. We often want to know, more importantly, which of those features that went into it is most related to that outcome, right? So you're talking about GPS data. You have all these measures to look at, and you wonder, what am I going to look for here? What machine learning and modeling will tell you is these things are the most related to this, so it can help you target your observations. As coaches, then, you're not examining all of these metrics, and you're not choosing them randomly. You're choosing them based on what is statistically linked together. All right. So that's our process, right? We link everything together, we gather all this data. What do we do with this, right? How are we going to use this in practice? So we're going to talk through using on training or game day, understanding why things are happening, player development, and comparison. And then we'll talk through planning and projection, which is something that's more future, but is coming, and I feel like we're getting pretty close to that stage. So game day, training day. Every morning, you have your dashboards. You're sitting there, performance staff can come in, look, see what information is available. Help you inform your practices for that day, for that training session. See if you need to make adjustments for each player, who needs rest, who needs extra top-ups, who needs more work. So here we have an example dashboard, right? We see our different players, we have their positions, their statuses, some of their metrics displayed. We have their daily trend, we have their mood, fatigue, shape, pain report, sickness, and this is just a small portion of what we can actually show and see for each athlete on a given day. That's a great piece of information to have nice in the morning, right? I don't have to remember everything, it's just right there in front of me. Easy to look at, easy to identify. So we can ask, who needs rest, who needs recovery, who needs treatment, who needs an increase in intensity, and it's all focused on that individual player, right? We're making changes for the individual. Interventions then get targeted to maximize performance, right? We want to get the optimal out of this. For example, we see this guy here, he's a bit fatigued, so, what's going on there? Let's dive a little deeper into his metrics. Wow, he had a bad night's sleep last night. That guy had a rough time. Football players, often in their mid-20s, they have wives, small children. He's been up all night with his baby, right? Very wholesome activity, nice and good, but he's exhausted. What can we do about this? That's actually up to you guys. As an analytics person, we help find you problems, you guys define the solutions. That's what matters, right? We're there to support your decisions, not make them for you. I have heard of some really novel ones for this, though. So a football club in England, they actually deny their players caffeine during the week. They give it to them on game day mornings. But if you come in and you're exhausted, your sleep metrics are terrible, give you a fresh cup of coffee, and you actually get to enjoy your training session that day. Beyond that, though, they go further, right? Professional players, they're there for the whole day. They have beds at their training facility, make them take a nap, which I think is brilliant, right? You have these professional athletes being told, oh no, it's time for you, sir, you need to go to bed. Have a little nap and sleep. Just an example, again, interventions are your guys' work. This I love. Having alerts that automate what you need to look at. So not just do you need to search the numbers yourself, it's automatically triggered. It's going to help you and direct you to where you look, right? So we see these guys all have 1, 2, or 3, so things are going on, but it simplifies it for us, right? It's all about making the job easier, making that information quicker to pull up. So here, we see person's got less than 7 hours sleep for the last 3 nights, I'd say. If you guys have been going to all the conference activities, that's probably pretty similar to most of us right now. We have some pain, and he's bored. Great thing about this is you don't need to wait for your data analyst to wake up. He can sleep in, he can do his work at nighttime in a dark room. It's there, it's fresh each morning, right? It's automatic, which is, I think, amazing. Because I don't want to get up early and start coding. I'm a nighttime coder, I'm not a morning person. Just some of the different things we can pull out, right? So people who've gone excessive training load, elevated heart rate, they have systematic fatigue, which we see by decreased heart rate variability, might have asymmetry, might have reduced jump height, increased soreness, poor sleep, excess stress, high acute chronic workload. So tons of things that come out. They're suggested actions. You guys are the best at defining those. You know your players the best, right? You can target it to them. I've done a lot of injury analysis, so I've run injury analysis for maybe 70 teams back in the day. At one point, I think I was the person who'd seen the most unique GPS injury data sets. Predicting those things in the future is hard, right? Because someone takes a sharp turn, they do something in a game. But we can figure out those why. Can we modify our training? What were we doing in advance? And that's what this system does. If you're collecting data, we can look back and see the story of why something occurred. And now, we have nice dashboards. They summarize our whole stats for the club. We have the injuries people have suffered, what proportion of our squad is injured, average recovery time, total recovery time, player availability. Now, 440 days recovery is pretty rough, right? That's a lot of money, especially if it's in the Premier League or the Serie A. That's big dollars. We see a guy here, he's in a return to training process. And then we can dive a little deeper, get more information. So we can look at what was happening prior to his injury. There are innumerable metrics there we can look at to tell the story and just figure out maybe why this happened, right? Understand it. Can we use this to modify our work in the future? We also have information on the injury itself, the diagnosis, we have the rehabilitation, the return to training plan. All located in a single place. No one's chasing notes. There's not random Excel sheets or Word files that have all our details. Stored centrally. If you want to use this for an analysis later, say you decide to start running injury models in your club, your data is there. You can pull it down, you can do the analytics, right? It preserves that data quality for you automatically. We might see, and these are pretty simple examples, right? These things are more problem. If you're a coach, you let this happen, it's probably a bit dark. But we have workload building up steadily over time, likely too fast an increase. Maybe we see their sleep is getting steadily worse. So if something's happening at nighttime, we'll know in the future to keep an eye on that and target it for future interventions, right? That's where we start to send players for naps at lunchtime because, all right, if they get sleep deprived, they're going to get hurt. I would say sleep was a top 10 predictor in about 80% of the injury analysis I ran. So fatigue is a very real problem. You, of course, want to develop players, right? You want your players continuously improving, especially at the academy, youth levels, and the rest. These systems let us set personalized performance goals. We can keep up to date with them. They're stored for us. We know what the goals set were. So when we look back, weeks from now, we know what we were targeting. We know what the goal of this was. So maybe we have it tracked, and this guy's made some beautiful improvements. He's happy, he's back to play, right? He's in top shape. All in one place. We can compare players to their peers, see who's stronger in certain areas, who's weaker in others, learn their strengths and weaknesses as it's relative to our team. That's really useful for context for us, right? It's going to help us understand things. Okay, now I'm going to talk about planning. And this is where I think this is all moving, and I think it's been pretty cool. So looking backwards is great, right? That's wonderful. But we have a lot of data now. Clubs have been collecting GPS data for years. We have the tools to look forward. So if we think about it, right, we have everyone's workload from our practices. Preferably, we have it broken down to the drill level. So we know what their distance is going to be, what their high-speed running is going to be, what it's going to look like. Cool. So then we can figure out, if we plan a future practice, what their metrics are going to look like. Games are a bit more variable, but we can figure out estimated workload, and then we can project that into the future. What that will let us do is say this is our normal weekly activity, right? So we have people recover on Sundays, fitness Mondays, we go hard Tuesday and Wednesday. I work with a lot of American football people, and Notre Dame has what they call World War Wednesday, where they just run themselves into the ground. I've seen people after that, it's pretty bad. One of my offensive lineman players had to be carted off and given a drip one day, because that's how dehydrated he got himself. I saw him the next morning, he had 4 or 5 bottles of water. I was like, Josh, are you thirsty? What's going on here? He told me they carried him off, and I'm like, you're a big boy. That must have been a good few people carrying you. But so this is what it looks like currently. Now we can estimate the levels for all of these, and that's great. When we know the levels, right, we look into the future, and on game day, we might have an objective set of load we want them to be, level of preparedness. We can then start to modify it for each athlete. So we can plan out into the future then, all right, player 2, he's a bit fatigued, he's run down. He needs a nice recovery session, a light training session instead of World War Wednesday. Same with player 5. Player 6, less recovery, just 2 light training sessions. It lets it be customizable. And so if you can imagine then, and I'm just going to use injury rate as a proxy here, but imagine this is pretty much all of our variables. We can modify things in our plan for the future that let us get our metrics to where we want them to be. So this will be all projected out, and you can plan 2-3 weeks in the future, plan your training sessions, plan your drills, see what that optimal workload is going to be for your players. I think that level of insight is really going to be game-changing, and I think that's going to be implemented within the next year or so. So, future's pretty bright. All right, conclusion for this. There is so much information out there. In fact, far too much, right? We're overloaded with information. We need to be able to pull it all together, tailor our decisions to drive better decisions on and off the pitch. AMS platforms, I did have like Ultrax in there. I'm not sure where it's gone, but it's where all my screenshots are from, thanks to you guys. And that lets us switch from reactive to proactive coaching, right? We're not just looking at the past, we're able to plan for the future, scope things out with a greater level of granularity than we could in the past. And then having everything personalized to each athlete, right? That's getting much more close, much more prescriptive. It's going to give us personalized info. Then we have our smart alerts and our player tracking, and that's going to help everyone, right? It empowers you guys, hopefully, to make better decisions when you're dealing with your players, and hopefully that leads to more winning. Now, my dad tried to get me to make this with a blue jersey, as I'm an Everton fan, but we haven't lifted a cup in a long time, so it's not too realistic. All right, so thank you guys. Thank you, Ultrax, my friends and research partners. Thank you, Sunset, and thank you to all of you guys for staying late for the last session. I'll take questions if you have any.
None. They're all amazed by your.
There's one.
Oh, there is.
Hi. Thanks for the the presentation. The piece I'm interested in is the last chart that you showed where you applied an individualized injury risk. Could you elaborate a little bit on how that works and how much confidence you have in the risk that you're applying to each of those players? Because that makes for interesting conversations with coaches.
Oh yeah. So what we would do, and I think data quantity is a big deal here. You often want 3, 4, 5 seasons of GPS and injuries for an accurate model. You model that all out using all your historical data to try to capture those historical patterns, and then you make a prediction of injury. Is it going to be incredibly accurate? No, but it will give us a sense of, oh, this guy is starting to look like these players who got hurt in the past, right? And then we can go examine what his metrics are going to be like, and they should hopefully be high too, because it's going to target it which players we look at. The injury risk itself is going to give us an idea, but injury is a very variable thing. Does that work? I'll talk to you further about this for sure. I don't want to go too deep on the modeling today.
Hey, Martin.
What's
Thank
up,
you
lad?
for a great lecture. I had a question about, when you were talking about, for example, injury risk. How do you strike a balance between having a super personalized model and a general world model that can help you when you have new players in the club, that you don't need to collect 3 or 4 or 5 years of data for that player to have a useful model? So how do you strike a balance between a very personalized model and a general world model that can model some correlations between?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that is a massive challenge. What I would do in that situation is, right, it's not going to work on day one. But as we get a small sample of data, what we can start to do is match them to the players who are closest to them in the historical data set we have. So we use that to estimate what their levels should be until we have that filled in with data. So we could track back, maybe cluster them with the rest of our players, which is all about finding groups of similar people. And we can use those metrics to push that forward.
Thank you.
Of course, lad.
Anyone else? Okay, Martin, thank you once again.
Thank you all.